You're listening to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. Nearly 3 years ago, a substation in Moore County was attacked. Thousands lost power. One person even died. WRAL Investigates Sarah Krueger joins us now to reflect on what we've learned over the past 3 years and what's next, not just for Moore County, but for other substations like this across our viewing area. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's crazy to believe that we're almost at that 3-year mark.
For those that don't remember, right, take us back to 3 years ago. What exactly happened? How did this all unfold?
Yeah, so, this was in Moore County, December 3rd, 2022, and I remember I was not working that day, or I was not covering this story that day, but I just remember, as we all got more information, it's one of those days in the newsroom that you just remember. But there were 2 different substations in Moore County that were shot at, hit by gunfire, that plunged more than 40,000 people into darkness, some for as long as 5 days. And it was really just this big mystery of what happened. Was this a hate crime? Was this something else? There were suspicions that it may have been related to a drag show that was to be in that area. So this was something that got, so much attention at the time and really shrouded in so much mystery then, and even 3 years later, still so many unanswered questions.
And the fallout of something like this, I do think, is important. Like we mentioned at the top of this, 45,000 people were without power for upwards of 5 days.
Right, during a cold snap, very cold time of the year. Yeah, and then you mentioned a Pinehurst woman died when her oxygen machine shut down. So some very real consequences, lifelong consequences from this.
So we fast forward now to the present day. Your Investigates piece. Tell us a little bit about it. What was the focus? Where do things stand now?
Yeah, so that's really what we wanted to know, is what is the update? Because it's been a very long time and we have not gotten an update from investigators, but it's still very much a case that for people in Moore County in particular, has altered their way of life and is something that is just really on their memory. So I reached out to the Moore County Sheriff to ask a number of questions, including, what they're doing to find those responsible. Is the case still a priority? Is there any new information that we could, as WRAL, could share with the public that could help investigators? And what I heard back from the sheriff, he did not answer those questions. He did say, though, that his office is working with the FBI to maybe hold a joint press conference in the future. So I don't know if that might, happen on the exact day of the 3-year anniversary. We can cross our fingers for that. The FBI still involved in this investigation, but, no arrests to date. And we have reported that about a year after the attack, a search warrant was released, and it showed investigators had identified a person of interest in the attacks within 2 days. And they also put out information, investigators did, about a minivan. They were seeking tips on helping to identify a minivan. It was a Honda Odyssey, silver or light blue. So, there were some crumbs there. It seemed that they had some good things to go on, but yet still no one charged.
Has there been any kind of thought from investigators about why this is proving to be so challenging? What is it? What are the big questions that they still are struggling to answer?
Yeah, I know we've reported that whoever, or whether it was one person or multiple who did the attacks, the experts believe that that person or people had some intimate knowledge about the workings of Duke Energy or substations, grid systems. I can imagine that as time goes on, time is not a friend of investigators. And so, yeah, I personally wonder if they're just feeling increasingly, losing hope as time goes on. Hopefully not. But the silence has been, I guess not unexpected. We're used to people telling us this is under investigation and we're not going to comment on it. But I think there are just so many questions for this community still.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at what's next for these different substations and the security around them in Moore County. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. We're joined by WRAL Investigates Sarah Krueger, who is reflecting on the 3-year anniversary, essentially, of an attack on substations in Moore County that made thousands lose power, one woman died as a result of all of this. So you mentioned you reached out to investigators asking questions. But in the past 3 years, has Moore County made any kind of changes to these substations? Or is there more security in place or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have been asking that question of Duke Energy pretty much since these attacks. And I asked it again for this story, and we heard something similar to what we've heard in the past, which is that they really can't talk in detail about security because they don't want to, be too overt or too open about what their security plans are. But a spokesperson for Duke Energy, Jeff Brooks, he did tell me that there are measures they're taking and have already taken to help deter these types of attacks in the future.
I probably should have asked you this earlier, but for those that may not be familiar with the substation, right? Can you just describe what it physically is, what it looks like? It's something that people, I'm sure, drive by a lot more than they realize.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised in doing my work for this story. I asked my photographer that I was working with, like, hey, where's the nearest substation we can go get video of, as a general substation? He was like, just a few minutes away. So we went there, and it's a lot of metal. I'm sorry, I'm not an engineer, but it's a lot of metal. There is fencing around these substations. The one that we went to was a chain link fence. To me, it just was, a loud humming metal area that I never would have given any thought to prior to this at all.
So what's next for this investigation, Sarah? What have people kind of pointed to?
Yeah, well, hopefully we will have that press conference that the sheriff alluded to. Perhaps with the FBI, we could get an update on where things stand, see if there are any new nuggets that we could help share with the public. I will mention that Duke Energy, along with the FBI, Moore County, and the governor's office, they are all offering a combined reward of up to $100,000 for information on this case. So some serious money on the line here, really trying to encourage people to come forward.
Now that we're at a point here where you've presented your investigates, you've kind of gone through the process here, what questions do you personally have besides, the obvious, who did this? What else stands out to you about the situation?
Yeah, I still just think why. Like, there's no clear reason in my mind. There's no one impetus that law enforcement have coalesced upon, have agreed upon as a possible motive for this attack. And it was something so deliberate. 2 substations shot at with very real consequences for tens of thousands of people, and particularly for that one family who lost a beloved member of their family. Why? That's the one I just keep coming back to. I guess the most obvious question, but one hopefully people there will get an answer to.
And in your history just of being an investigative journalist, is it common for things like this to go so long without answers? Is that more common than I think people realize?
I think so. And I was thinking about this today, actually, just about, it's been 3 years, is all hope gone for an arrest? But then, there always are those cold cases you hear about that are solved decades later. And I know in my interviews with investigators on many different kinds of cold cases, they are never giving up hope. They are much more in this for the long game. They have that experience of knowing it could take a while, but I'm sure that there are investigators still resolutely working on this very case.
A lot of questions still to be answered. Sarah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you.
I'm Luis Fernandez. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.